This is Larry Nelson with W3W3.com, Colorado's voice of the business and technology community. We link people and organizations to unique and valuable resources, and we're talking to a valuable resource today. I can't wait to get into this. Christine Reardon. Chris, you are the Dean, Professor of Management at Daniels College of Business. Mm-hmm. I really like it here. This is super, and what you've been doing. But I want to get into that, and you've got some very, very interesting topics that we want to talk about. But, you are extremely involved with many organizations, and you were just recently elected to one. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, Larry. Thanks so much. I am engaged a lot in the community here in Denver. I'm on the board of Mile High United Way and Junior Achievement and the Colorado Society of CPA. And most recently, I was elected to the International Society for Accrediting Business Schools, AACSB. And that was an international election.
Wow. Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Now, starting off, we're going to talk a little bit about leadership. And leadership requires mental toughness.
Yes.
Okay. Now, could you talk about some of the elements about mental toughness and why and how they exist?
There's a great parallel between business today and sports. And a lot of what we do with sports is we train our athletes to have a mental toughness, an attitude, an ability to adapt. And when we think about what business has been through for the last 5 years, the same concepts apply to business leaders today. Thinking about being an executive in today's business environment is very tough. There's a lot of change, it's rapid, there's massive amounts of information, there's a need to think differently. And so mental toughness is a concept that business leaders should apply every single day and to their own personal lives as well as to their organization. It includes things like flexibility. Are you flexible enough to adapt your plays within your company, to change business as you need to change business? Are you responsive to the changing demands of the game of business? Do you have the courage to make some pretty tough decisions? Do you have the resilience to fight back and to get back into the game when things don't go your way? And are you acting like a good sportsman throughout the game of business? And so when we talk about mental toughness, it's really taking some of the concepts that they use in sports and applying them in business.
Wow, that's fantastic. I know from a number of the graduates, because we've talked to many graduates over this past number of years out of Daniels, they're doing a good job. That's super.
Thank you.
Now, another question. Leaders have to make decisions, all different types, from hiring to investments and new approaches to things. Now, you also hear a great deal about executives who are overly confident maybe when they're making decisions. And of course, that can be a problem too. What are some of the things that we could talk about there?
Larry, I'm going to come across like a huge sports fan, which I am, but I just finished an article with Forbes and I used the movie Trouble with the Curve. And it was about a sports recruiter, a baseball recruiter that was looking at recruits. And they had a parallel between the older recruiter and a younger recruiter, where the older recruiter used a diversity of information to make decisions about how to recruit players onto the team. And one of the things that we see in business today with an overconfidence in decision making is that a lot of times executives and managers overestimate their knowledge base.
Yep.
And they don't seek out information. And part of the challenge for today's leader is to really seek out a lot of information that they don't necessarily have within their own portfolio, within their own knowledge base. I think the second issue that comes up quite a bit is that tendencies exist within companies as well as within executives to ignore disconfirming information. I just had a conversation this morning with somebody in the financial services sector who was talking about the lack of trust within the community for financial services. 22% of people trust financial service organizations. That's a lot of people that don't trust them. And they said, how do we know within our organization that we are in fact cultivating trust? And I said, you have to seek out the disconfirming information. Go and ask your clients. And too often organizations and executives don't seek out disconfirming information to say whether or not they're doing a good job. I think the last thing that comes in as a challenge and relates to overconfidence in decision making is that we have an over-reliance on our past successes. So too often people think that the same thing that got them to the successful place they are today will get them to the next level. And in many cases, that's just not accurate. So an over-reliance on past successes, a failure to seek out disconfirming information, and an overestimate of how much knowledge we actually have leads to overconfidence in decision making often.
Well, of course, one of the issues facing all leaders and managers has to do with change. And I know you deal with that topic a great deal. I've talked to a number of your people and say they really love the way she works with them and helps make change happen. So could you get into some of the change issues and what you recommend?
Sure, absolutely. I just worked with an executive team this morning for 2 hours on this topic. Rapid change is part of our day-to-day business today. And there's a couple of pointers that I always give executives. One, you have to put change on your to-do list. Every single one of us has a list of actions and things that we need to do each day and each week. And you really should have one of your topics being leading change. What are you doing to help promote positive change? What are you doing to help communicate the positive change? What are you helping to do to think about where you need to change? And making it part of your regular day-to-day activities. Leading change really now is a requirement of leadership. I think the second thing that people have to really pay attention to is their own reaction to change. Some people love change.
Yeah.
Other people hate change. And so as you're in the moment, you have to really think about how your reaction's helping or hindering a positive change within the organization. I think the third thing we have to recognize is that the pace of change is exceedingly fast. There was a great study done by IBM about a year and a half ago, and they polled 1,500 CEOs. And it asked them, what is the number one challenge that you are facing as a CEO and that your firm is facing? And without fail and with overwhelming response, they said the pace of change and the complexity of change is the most difficult thing that they'll be facing for this next decade. And then I think the last thing that I often tell people is that one person doesn't create change within an organization. That you actually have to create a network of change enablers. And that you have to create this coalition of people who are on board with the change that you want to make and are going to help lead the path, because one person can't do it alone. And the only way really today in business to create positive change is to have a whole group of people that are on board with it.
Boy, I must say, of course, change is one of my favorite topics too. I want to thank you for joining us, Chris, today so much. This is valuable information.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Larry.
Now, you listeners out there, I've said this before, not too often, but I'm going to say it right now. Listen to this a second and maybe even a third time. Be ready to take some notes because there's some great, fabulous ideas here. But Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you, Larry.
All right, you listeners out there also, you can listen to this 24/7 at w3w3.com. Download it as a podcast, and we'll have it on our blog too.